The twin moons hung low over the crystal towers of Vylara Palace, their silver light pouring into the empty marble corridors. In one of the highest chambers, Princess Lyara stood by the balcony, her long violet hair swaying in the night breeze. She looked out over her kingdom with the eyes of someone who belonged to it, yet felt like a stranger inside it. Everyone in the empire knew the story of the royal curse for generations. Every queen had produced an heir to carry on the bloodline. But Lyara, despite her beauty, wisdom, and strength, had never been able to conceive a child. Healers had tried, shamans had prayed. Even ancient machines had been awakened. All failed. The court whispered that she was unfit to rule. The council kept their smiles polite, but behind closed doors. They discussed replacing her with another branch of the family. She had learned to carry herself with dignity, but each day felt heavier than the last. The people loved her kindness, but they also feared the curse that followed her. Her enemies saw weakness. Her allies saw an opportunity to gain more power. That night, the palace was hosting an unusual delegation. Humans from Earth, a trade agreement had brought them to Vylara. And among the merchants and diplomats was a man named Daniel. He was not a politician. He was an engineer. His job was to repair the old water systems beneath the palace. He had no interest in the politics of alien royalty. He only wanted to do his work quietly and return home. Fate had other plans. The meeting between the princess and the human was not arranged by the council. It happened by accident. A sudden power outage plunged one wing of the palace into darkness. Lyara, curious and unafraid, took a lantern and walked the silent hall. In a narrow corridor, she found a man in worn work clothes, crouched over an open panel, tools in his hands. "You are not one of my guards," she said softly, her voice carrying the tone of someone used to being obeyed. Daniel looked up, startled. "No, Your Highness. I'm here to fix the main pump," he replied, standing quickly. His accent was strange to her ears, but his tone held no fear. Most who met her eyes showed either awe or pity. He showed neither. They spoke briefly, and though the conversation was simple, Lyara found herself strangely drawn to his straightforward way of speaking. He didn't try to flatter her. He didn't look at her as the cursed princess, just her. Over the next few days, their paths crossed again. Sometimes in the gardens where he checked the old water fountains. Sometimes in the great kitchens where the palace servants whispered about him. Rumors began to spread. Why was the princess speaking to a human so often? One evening, in the great hall, the council discussed the possibility of arranging a political marriage for Lyara. The bloodline must continue. One elder said sharply, "If the princess cannot produce an heir, we must find another way." Lyara sat still, hiding the storm inside her. She had endured these talks for years. But tonight, they cut deeper. Her gaze shifted briefly toward the doors at the far end of the hall. She imagined walking out, away from the council, away from their expectations. That night, she walked alone through the moonlit gardens, her heart heavy with thoughts of the future she might lose. She heard footsteps behind her and turned to see Daniel, carrying a small toolkit. "You work late," she said with a faint smile. "And you walk alone," he replied. "Not very safe in a palace full of politics." She almost laughed, surprised by his honesty. They sat near the fountain, the sound of water masking their voices. He asked her about her people, their customs, and their beliefs. She told him only what she wished to share, but his presence made her feel lighter. Finally, he asked the question no one dared to speak directly to her. "Is it true what they say about you?" She didn't look at him. "It is true," she said quietly. "They believe I cannot have children. And for that, they believe I cannot rule." Daniel was silent for a moment, then said, "Where I come from, we don't let a problem decide a person's worth. Sometimes Problems can be solved. The words stayed in her mind long after he left. She had heard hundreds of doctors and healers tell her there was no hope, but this human spoke as if nothing was final, as if the impossible was simply work that had not been done yet. The wind whispered through the palace trees, carrying with it the first spark of something Liara had not felt in years' hope. She didn't know it yet, but that night was the beginning of a story that would shake the empire, challenge ancient beliefs, and unite two worlds. By the next sunrise. The palace had already begun to hum with quiet rumors. Servants carrying trays whispered in corners. Guards exchanged glances. And advisors spoke in half-sentences when the princess passed by. They had noticed, of course, the unusual way Princess Liara's path seemed to cross with the human engineers. Daniel, for his part, remained focused on his work. He moved through the palace's hidden corridors, repairing water lines, adjusting ancient valves, and checking fountains that had not flowed in decades. Yet somehow, no matter where he went, it seemed Liara found her way to him. Sometimes it was by chance. Sometimes because she had quietly asked a servant where he was working that day. In the grand dining hall during the midday meal, two council members leaned close over their plates. "It is not proper," one murmured. "A human has no place at the princess's side." The other replied, "Perhaps she thinks to distract herself from the curse with novelty." Their words were meant to be private, but nothing stayed private in the palace for long. Liara was aware of the whispers. She had lived with them her whole life. But the talk about Daniel felt different. It was not pity, it was suspicion. And suspicion could turn dangerous in a court where ambition was sharper than any blade. Later that day, while Daniel was repairing the ancient filtration tanks deep beneath the palace, a soft light entered the dark chamber. Liara stood there, her royal robes brushing against the stone floor. "You should not be here," Daniel said. Looking up from his tools, "These halls are damp and cold. I've lived in colder." She replied with a faint smile. She watched him work for a moment before speaking again. "The council does not trust you. They don't have to," Daniel said, tightening a bolt. "I'm not here for them." His words stirred something inside her. In this place, everyone wanted something: power, gold, influence. Only this human seemed content to do his work and ask for nothing in return. That evening, Lyra's personal maid, Sira, came to her chambers with fresh linens. "My princess," she whispered, "they are saying the human speaks to you as if you are equals." Liara set down the scroll she had been reading. "And what do you think, Sira?" "I think," the maid said carefully, "that he looks at you without fear, and that is rare." The princess said nothing, but her eyes softened. 2 nights later, the council gathered for an emergency meeting. A neighboring star system had sent word of unrest. The council proposed an alliance through marriage, a political union between Liara and a prince from a powerful family. Liara listened in silence, her heart heavy with the weight of their plan. She imagined a life chained to duty, sharing nothing but cold formalities with a stranger. Her gaze drifted briefly toward the heavy doors of the chamber, where Daniel had once passed carrying tools. She thought of his plain, honest words. When the meeting ended, she walked into the quiet outer corridors. Her footsteps echoed softly on the polished floor, and from the shadows ahead came the familiar sound of clinking metal. Daniel was there, kneeling beside an open wall panel. "Do you always work at night?" she asked. "Do you always walk without guards?" He countered with a half smile. She sat on the low stone ledge beside him. "The council wants me to marry a prince from the house of Dreth," she said. Her tone was light, but her eyes betrayed her unease. "And do you want that?" Daniel asked, not stopping his work. "No," she said simply. Her voice carried no hesitation. "But they believe I have no choice." Daniel finally looked at her. "Where I'm from, choice is everything," he said. "Even if the world says you have none, you can make one." His words stayed with her through the night, and by morning she had made a small but important choice. She would not allow the council to decide her fate without resistance. That day, she sent Daniel a quiet invitation to meet her in the palace gardens after sunset. When he arrived, the garden was lit by small crystal lanterns hanging from the trees. The air smelled faintly of night-blooming flowers. "I want to ask you something," she began, her voice steady. "On your world, do you have ways to help? Women like me, women who are told they can never have children." Daniel paused, studying her expression. "Yes," he said at last, "we do, sometimes. What others call impossible is just a problem no one's solved yet." Her heart raced. "And could you?" "Try." "I could try," he said, "but it would have to be in secret. If your council finds out, they might send me away, or worse." Liara nodded. "Then we will be careful." From that night forward, a silent pact was made, while the court argued over politics and alliances. Deep in the hidden rooms beneath the palace, a human engineer and an alien princess began a dangerous, fragile hope. Neither knew how the story would end, but both knew it had already begun. The next few days passed with a quiet tension hanging over the palace. To the court, nothing seemed unusual. The princess still attended council meetings, still moved through the halls with her graceful calm. But behind those calm eyes, a storm was building in the hidden maintenance tunnels. Daniel worked with an old scanner he had brought from his ship. The device was small, almost like a worn-out tablet, but its power came from Earth's advanced medical knowledge. Liara stood nearby, her long sleeves brushing against the dusty walls. She had insisted on coming, even though the air was stale and the stone floor was cold. Daniel ran the scanner along her arm, checking for compatibility. "Your physiology is complex," he muttered, "but not impossible." She tilted her head. "Impossible is a word my people like to use," she said. "It keeps them from trying." Daniel looked up at her. "Where I come from, impossible just means it hasn't been done yet." Her lips curved into the faintest smile in that moment. Something unspoken passed between them, not just hope, but trust. The first plan he proposed was risky. He explained how human medical technology could be adapted to her biology. It would take time, secrecy, and the use of certain palace resources. Without the council's knowledge, Liara listened carefully, her heart beating faster with each word. "You realize," she said, "if they find out, they will accuse us of treason." "I know," Daniel replied. "But I also know that you're tired of letting them decide your life." Her silence was answer enough. That evening, during the royal banquet, the council announced that the marriage proposal from the House of Dreth had been formally accepted. Gasps filled the hall. The alliance was meant to be a grand political move. Yet Liara felt the walls closing in. She kept her face still, but her mind was already racing. In the corner of the room, Daniel stood with the other human guests. His eyes met hers for just a second. It was enough to remind her that she still had a choice. Later that night, she slipped away from the palace feast and found him waiting in the dark garden. Lantern light danced over the marble paths. "They are forcing me to marry," she said without preamble. Her voice was low but sharp. "If we fail, I will lose more than my throne. I will lose myself." Daniel stepped closer, his voice calm. "Then we don't fail." His confidence was almost unsettling, but it steadied her heart. "You speak as if you have already decided," she said. "I have," he replied. "We begin tomorrow." The next day, Daniel started gathering what he needed: special nutrient compounds, tiny micro-injectors, and certain medical tools stored in the palace's restricted vaults. To get them, Liara used her royal authority, signing quiet orders that never went through the council's main records. One afternoon, as they worked in the hidden chamber beneath the old library, the door creaked open unexpectedly. Lyra's breath caught. A palace guard stepped inside, torchlight spilling across the dusty floor. Daniel's hand went to his toolkit, ready to hide the equipment, but Liara stepped forward, her voice commanding. "These are private archives. Guard, you are dismissed." The man hesitated, his eyes flicking toward Daniel, but he bowed and left without a word. When the door shut, Daniel exhaled slowly. That was too close. "It will get closer," Liara said. "The more we do, the more eyes will follow us." The first stage of the procedure began that night. Daniel explained each step in plain words, making sure she understood the risks. She listened, not as a princess being served, but as an equal partner in something that could change everything. As the small medical device hummed to life, Liara closed her eyes. "If this works," she whispered, "then my people will have to see me differently. And if it doesn't?" Daniel asked quietly. "Then I will still have tried," she said. "That alone will be enough for me." For hours, Daniel worked with steady hands, combining the precision of a mechanic with the care of a healer. Liara remained still, her mind wandering to the life she had never dared to imagine, a life where she was not cursed, where she could hold her own child in her arms. When it was done, Daniel stepped back, sweat on his brow. "The first step is complete," he said. "Now we wait." They cleaned the chamber and left separately, careful not to be seen together. But in the quiet of her chambers that night, Liara felt something stirring, not physically, but in her spirit. The path ahead was dangerous. Yet for the first time, she felt she was walking it willingly. Far away in his guest quarters, Daniel sat by the small window, looking out at the alien skyline. He had come here to fix water systems, but now he was trying to fix a destiny. And somewhere deep down, he knew that if this worked, it would not only change Lyra's life, would change the future of both their worlds. The palace was alive with celebration. Lanterns glowed along the high arches, music floated through the air, and nobles from distant worlds filled the grand hall. A festival had been arranged to honor the visiting dignitaries, and the council hoped to show the empire's unity. But for Liara, the festival was more than politics, it was cover. While the attention of the court was fixed on music and dance, Daniel prepared for the next stage of their secret plan. In the hidden chamber beneath the gardens, he laid out the equipment carefully. The small medical console, the nutrient vials, the scanner, all borrowed or modified from the palace's forgotten storerooms. Liara arrived in a plain cloak, her royal robes hidden beneath. Her heart raced as she stepped into the dim room. "Is everything ready?" she asked. Daniel nodded. "Tonight, we see if the first stage worked." The hum of the console filled the chamber as Daniel began scanning her. Numbers and images flickered across the small display. His brow furrowed as he studied the data. "What does it say?" she asked, her voice tight. "It says we're close," he replied. "Closer than I expected." Relief and fear tangled inside her. This was no longer just an idea, they were standing on the edge of proof. They began the second procedure, Daniel guiding her through each step. His hands moved with precision, his voice steady. Liara felt the faint warmth of the machine's energy against her skin. She focused on the rhythm of her breathing, trying to keep her mind calm. But halfway through, her vision blurred. A sharp wave of dizziness hit her, and her knees buckled. Daniel caught her before she could fall. "Easy, stay with me," he said firmly. Her eyes fluttered open. "I'm fine," she whispered, though her face had gone pale. "You're not fine," Daniel said, quickly shutting down the console. "We're stopping for tonight." "No," she protested weakly. "We can't stop now." He shook his head. "If I push your system too hard, we risk everything." She wanted to argue, but her strength failed her. He guided her to the bench along the wall and made her drink a nutrient blend from a small flask. The metallic taste clung to her tongue. Suddenly, heavy footsteps echoed outside the chamber door. Daniel froze. Liara's eyes widened, the door swung open, and two guards stepped in, torches in hand. What is going on here? One demanded. His gaze moved from Daniel's equipment to the princess's pale face. Liara rose to her feet, her royal authority returning like a shield. This man is under my personal order. She said coldly, "You will leave us at once." The guards hesitated, exchanging uneasy glances. "Your Highness?" The council does not speak for me in my private affairs." She interrupted sharply. "Go." They bowed stiffly and withdrew, the door closing behind them. Daniel let out a slow breath that was too close. "It will get closer," Liara said quietly. "The council will hear of this by morning," and she was right. By dawn, Daniel was summoned before the high chamber. Council members sat in a half circle, their robes heavy with embroidered authority. "We have concerns," the elder began. "You are here as a guest, yet you are found in restricted parts of the palace at night. Explain yourself." Daniel kept his voice calm. "I was performing maintenance work on the old systems under the gardens." The council's eyes narrowed. One of them leaned forward, and the princess. "What business does she have in such places?" Daniel's jaw tightened, but before he could answer, the great doors opened and Liara entered. She walked with the grace of command. "The princess answers for herself," she said. "This man works at my request. Anyone who challenges his presence challenges me." A murmur rippled through the chamber. The council could not openly defy her without risking public scandal. Reluctantly, they dismissed Daniel, but the suspicion in their eyes had deepened. That night, Liara met him again in the garden. The festival's music drifted faintly from the halls. "You were almost sent away today," she said softly. "And you were almost accused of treason," he replied. "Then we must finish before they have a reason to stop us," she said, determination hardening her voice. They returned to the chamber, and this time the procedure went without interruption. Daniel worked with steady concentration, adjusting the settings, watching the readings carefully. When the console finally beeped its completion, he stepped back. "It's done," he said. Liara sat still for a moment, absorbing his words. "And now?" "Now we wait," he answered. "If it worked, you'll know soon enough." She nodded, her eyes meeting his. In them was a quiet fire, part hope, part defiance. The test had been dangerous, but the real challenge was yet to come. Days passed, and the palace returned to its usual rhythm. To outsiders, nothing had changed. The council still held long meetings. Guards still patrolled the golden corridors, and Liara still appeared in public with the same calm grace. But inside her chambers, she was waiting, watching for something only she and Daniel knew to expect. It was on the 7th morning that she noticed it, a faint but undeniable shift in her body. It was not pain, nor sickness, but a warmth deep within her, like a spark that had finally caught flame. She touched her stomach without thinking, her heart pounding. Sira, her maid, entered quietly with a tray of tea. "You seem different today, my princess," she said. Lyra's hand fell back to her side. "Perhaps I am," she replied with a small smile. Later that day, she sent a discreet message to Daniel. They met in the old library, a place where few ever came. He was already there, pretending to inspect the dusty shelves. "It's happening," she whispered as soon as the door closed. Daniel's eyes lit up. "You're sure?" "I'm sure," she said. "I can feel it. It's like my body has woken up." He nodded, but his face remained serious. "This is good news, but we must be careful. If anyone suspects too soon, they will find a way to stop this." Liara agreed. They decided to keep the signs hidden for as long as possible. But secrets in a palace have a way of slipping into the air like whispers, and already there were those who sensed a change. 2 council members spoke in hushed tones that evening. "She looks stronger," one muttered, her eyes. "They have fire again," the other frowned. "It is dangerous." If she finds a way to produce an heir, she will be untouchable. Meanwhile, Liara and Daniel continued their quiet meetings. He brought her nutrient blends and monitoring devices. Small enough to hide in her gown, she reported every new change she felt, and together they charted her progress. One afternoon, while walking in the palace gardens, Liara felt a wave of dizziness. She sat quickly on a stone bench. Daniel, who was repairing a nearby fountain, came over at once. "Are you all right?" he asked quietly. "Yes," she said with a faint smile. "It's just..." Stronger now, his expression softened. That's a good sign, but the danger was growing. The rival royal house had begun spreading rumors. They claimed the princess was hiding something from the people, that her secret meetings with the human were a threat to the empire. One night, Sira entered Leora's chambers, looking pale. "My princess, there is talk. Dangerous talk. They say the council is preparing to investigate you directly." Lyra's eyes narrowed. "Let them," she said calmly, though inside, her heart raced. She met with Daniel the next morning. "They will come for me soon." She told him, "Then we make sure you are ready before they do." He replied. In the days that followed, Daniel adjusted her treatment, carefully balancing progress with safety. Each session was a risk. Each time they met, they risked being seen. One evening, as the twin moons rose, Liara stood before her mirror. She saw not the cursed princess the court had whispered about for years, but a woman standing on the edge of a new future. She touched her stomach again, feeling the subtle change that no one else could yet see. The next morning, the palace doctor came for a routine check. Liara had no choice but to allow it. She sat calmly as he examined her. His brow furrowed slightly, as if noticing something unusual. "Is there a problem?" she asked, her voice carefully neutral. The doctor hesitated. "No, Your Highness," he said at last. But his eyes betrayed his curiosity. She knew then that it would not be long before the truth reached the council. That night, she met Daniel in the hidden chamber beneath the gardens. "We don't have much time," she said. "Then we make every day count," he replied. They stood in silence for a moment, the weight of their secret between them. Liara felt both fear and strength in equal measure. The first sign had come. And with it, the promise of a future she had once believed was impossible. Somewhere beyond the palace walls, the empire went on as always, unaware that its future heir might already be taking shape in the heart of the woman they had called cursed. The change in Princess Liara did not go unnoticed for long. By the end of the second week, whispers in the palace had turned into quiet. Accusations, servants spoke in the kitchens. Guards exchanged looks in the corridors, and council members met behind closed doors. The rival royal house, the ambitious House of Dreth, saw their chance. One cold morning, the palace bells rang. Not for celebration, but for assembly. Liara entered the grand hall to find rows of armed guards lining the walls. The council sat at the far end, their faces grim. Beside them stood Lord Varen of House Dreth, his voice loud and sharp. "Princess Liara has hidden matters of great importance from her people," he declared. "She has allowed an outsider human to influence her decisions in secret. This is a threat to the stability of our empire." Murmurs spread through the gathered nobles. Liara met Varen's gaze. Without flinching, "And what is it you accuse me of?" she asked, her voice steady. "That you conspire to produce an heir by unnatural means," he said, letting the words echo through the hall. For a moment, silence filled the room. Then the whispers grew louder. Daniel was nowhere to be seen least not yet. He was in the maintenance halls below, working on a plan Liara had asked for in case things turned dangerous. But when word reached him that the council was moving to detain her, he left his tools and went straight to the grand hall. Liara stood tall as the council demanded answers. "You speak of treason," she said, "but what you fear is not treason, it is change." You fear that I may no longer be under your control. Varen's eyes narrowed. You admit nothing. Yet you defy us openly. Guards, the heavy doors burst open. Daniel strode inside. His plain work clothes were covered in dust, but his eyes were fierce. If you want her, he said, you'll have to go through me. The hall erupted in gasps. Several guards moved forward. But Liara raised a hand. Stand down, she commanded. Her voice carried such authority that even the council hesitated. Varen sneered, you protect this human as if he is your equal. He is more than equal, Liara replied. He is the reason your so-called curse will soon be nothing but a story. The word sent a shock through the chamber. Some council members looked horrified, others stunned. Varen's face darkened, seized them both. He ordered in that instant. The guards loyal to Housedreth surged forward. But so did several of Leora's personal guard. Steel clashed against steel. The grand hall became a chaos of movement and shouts. Daniel pulled Leora toward the side. Corridor, we have to move now. They ran through the palace's narrow passages, footsteps echoing behind them. Leora's heart pounded not from fear, but from the fierce will to protect what she now carried. They reached the old tunnel entrance hidden behind the tapestry in the east wing. Daniel pulled it aside, revealing the dark stone stairway leading into the depths. Where does this lead? She asked between breaths. Outside the palace walls, he replied. Old escape routes from centuries ago. No one uses them now, as they descended. Shouts echoed faintly from above. The rival faction was not giving up easily. Halfway through the tunnel, Liara stopped, placing a hand on the cold wall. Daniel, if they catch us, they will kill you. Then we make sure they don't, he said. Taking her hand and pulling her forward, they emerged into the outer gardens beyond the fortified walls. The night air was cool, and the twin moons cast silver light across the grass. Daniel led her to a small maintenance outpost where he had hidden supplies. Inside, Liara took a deep breath. We can't run forever. I know, Daniel said. But we don't need forever. We just need enough time for the truth to show. Once they see what's happening, they can't deny it. Liara nodded. Her hand rested on her stomach again. Her determination grew stronger. Then we fight not with weapons, but with proof, back in the palace. The council tried to regain control, but rumors were already spreading faster than they could contain. Them servants whispered that the princess carried a child, and that the father was the human who had defied the council in open court. The people began to talk not with anger, but with curiosity. Even those who doubted could not ignore the possibility. The uprising had begun, not with an army, but with a single truth that threatened the old order, and though danger still surrounded them, Liara and Daniel knew they were no longer just fighting for survival, they were fighting for the future. The days after their escape were tense and filled with uncertainty. Liara and Daniel stayed hidden in the old maintenance outpost beyond the palace walls. The distant glow of the crystal towers was a reminder that the empire they were meant to lead was now hunting them, but time was on their side each morning. Liara woke with a new awareness of the life growing inside her. The changes were becoming impossible to ignore. Her skin held a new glow. Her strength was returning in ways she had not felt in years. Daniel noticed it too, though he spoke of it only in quiet moments back in the palace. The council's control was weakening. Rumors had grown into public conversation. The people spoke in markets and streets, some in disbelief, others in excitement. The princess is with child, they whispered. And the father is the human lord. Varen tried to silence the talk, but the more they denied it, the more the people believed it. A prophecy long buried in the empire's archives was being spoken of again, the prophecy of an heir born from two worlds, who would unite the stars under one banner. On the 12th night of their hiding, Liara looked out across the moonlit plains. We cannot hide forever, she said. The people must see us. They must see the truth for themselves. Daniel hesitated. If we return now, they might still try to take you by force. Then we return, not as fugitives. She said, but as rulers, the next morning. They left the outpost and made their way toward the city gates. The guards there were startled. But seeing Liara in person, with her royal bearing and Daniel at her side, they stepped aside. Without raising their weapons, word spread through the streets faster than the wind. By the time they reached the palace steps, hundreds had gathered. The council met them in the grand courtyard. Varen at their front. His face was tight with controlled rage. You dare return after your betrayal? He demanded. Liara stepped forward, her voice clear enough for all to hear. The only betrayal is the one you have committed against your people. You called me cursed, unfit to rule. But I stand here carrying the future of our empire. Gasps filled the air. Some nobles turned their heads to see if she was lying. But the truth was plain. Her condition was visible now. Varen tried to speak, but his voice was drowned by the rising murmur of the crowd. Daniel stood at her side, his presence steady. A council member finally asked, and the father? Liara turned her gaze to Daniel. The father stands here, she said. A man from another world. A man who gave me hope when all of you gave me chains. The courtyard fell silent. The prophecy was no longer a myth, was standing before them. One of the elder counselors, who had remained quiet through the uprising, stepped forward. If this is true, then by the law of our ancestors, the child is the rightful heir. And the parents shall rule together. The statement sent shockwaves through the gathered nobles. Varen's plans collapsed in an instant, with the people's eyes upon him. He could not openly defy the ancient law without turning the crowd into an angry mob. Slowly, the members of the council bowed their heads in reluctant acceptance. The crowd followed, their voices rising in a chant of the princess's name. That night, the palace halls were filled with light once more, but this time it was not for politics or empty celebrations. It was for the return of their future queen and her chosen consort. Daniel stood with Liara on the balcony, looking over the cheering city. You've changed everything, he said quietly. No, she replied, taking his hand. We changed everything. Months later, the sound of a newborn's cry filled the royal chambers. Liara held their child close, the tiny hands curling against her. Daniel stood beside her, awe in his eyes. The child's skin was a perfect blend of both worlds, the mark of a future no. One could have imagined Liara looked at Daniel and smiled, the heir of two worlds. She whispered, outside, the city celebrated for days. For the first time in generations, the empire was united. Not by fear or tradition, but by hope and, in the years to come, the story of the cursed princess and the human who proved them wrong would be told across the stars.